Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Stephen, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, the Kang Dynasty has arisen and things are about to get weird. On an unrelated note, cults are overrunning Arkham, and Archie's trying to decide between two girls, and if you mash those stories up, you've just reinvented Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. They say you can't go home again, but the MSP is always here with an encouraging word, a hug, and some of Stephen's homemade chocolate chip cookies. So buck up, Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Smith of Anytown, USA, because the Major Spoilers podcast is knocking on your front door, and it's on the air.
Welcome to issue 1091 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you for downloading and checking us out this week. Rand was supposed to be here this week, but he said, quote, "I apologize for having to bail on you once again. I miss being involved, but things are nuts. Staffing is untenable. Getting harder to believe that," oh, well, I'll skip that part. Good news is that Adam and I will be doing an online concert on Friday, September 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern. This will be UCLA's first concert since 2018. The show will be part of the quarterly Festival of the Living Rooms, which is broadcast live via Zoom. Zoom links will be posted soon through this Facebook group, and I will put a link in the show notes if you want to go and do that. But maybe you could also just look for Festival of the Living Rooms on Facebook, and you would be able to find the link as well. I don't think they want the link posted publicly. I don't care. But I thought you'd be interested in knowing about the show and could certainly let listeners know about the show and that they could learn more by joining the Facebook group. So go and check that out. So that is why Rand is not here. Busy getting ready to do all those things. They've got a Filk festival. I think I saw something on Rand's Facebook page today where he was talking about he's on the committee for some Filk festival where they will, I don't want to misspeak here. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I want to say it's some board where they want to expose people to more Filk. And so, yeah, here it is. I am on the Interfilk Mini Grant Committee. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. But essentially, you can get some money, a mini grant, so that you can go to a Filk festival if you've never been to one. So there you go. That's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah, you can find out more at interfilk.org. Or just look up Rand Bellavia on Facebook and follow him there. So there you go. Rodrigo is also not here, feeling a little under the weather. He does have a few comments, though, that I will read later in the show. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, whatever, jump over onto our Discord server. There was a very, very good activity today in the Movies channel. You can find out more in our pre-show about that. But you can join the Major Spoilers Discord server absolutely free. And we want to see you join our growing community of awesome spoilerites. If you're sitting there going, "Oh, gee, guys, I don't know if I really want to go and join a Discord server. What if everybody's mean to me?" I can tell you for a fact that in the 5 years or whatever that we have had this Discord server up and running, we have, I think, the best community. I will put that up against any other Discord server out there. I don't see our community members attacking people needlessly. I don't see any kind of shaming that goes on. It's a great community. So what are you waiting for? Go and join the Discord server today. I've put a link in the show notes for it. All right, Matthew, enough of the chit-chat. I want to know what's going on with Archie, The Decision, a one-shot that came out last week from Archie Comics, where apparently Archie finally chose either Betty or Veronica. Now, this isn't the choice, right? This isn't just the rehashing of the choice from like a decade or so ago, where Archie went down one path and saw what his life would be like, and then went down another path and saw what his life would be like down there.
Yes, that is different. Yeah. And I want to say that was like 2007.
It may have been like 20 years ago. It is quite a while ago.
83 years ago, this December, Archie Andrews appeared on the scene, and about 12 minutes later, he started arguing whether he wanted to date Veronica or Betty. So, here's the thing that I didn't realize when I said I wanted to review Archie, The Decision. This is written by Tom King.
Okay, so he did the Supergirl. He did the Supergirl of Two Worlds or whatever that story was that we really loved. He's also done some other really cool, interesting things at DC and other places. I was just worried
that we were going to see Archie have to choose because he accidentally killed one of the girls. But thankfully, it is not that. It's actually pretty charming because Archie starts the story hanging out with Jughead, just talking about how maybe it's time they finally choose. And Jughead's like, I know just how you feel. I can't decide whether I want the deluxe double burger at Pop's or the barbecue. And so that sets us off into the discussion where they talk about the merits of barbecue and deluxe double, ketchup and mustard. And then they finally say, it feels like I've been trying to make up my mind for 80 years. And Jughead's like, maybe even 84. And so Archie decides that he's going to flip a coin.
And because all the best decisions are made on the flip of a coin.
Exactly. And he flips the coin, but he forgets something very important.
Which one went with heads and which one went with tails?
Hot Dog, Jughead's dog, who is weirdly anthropomorphic, likes to chase things if you throw them. So the quarter rolls away down the street, and Juggy and Archie chase after it. And they're like, oh, but Jughead stops just long enough when they crash into Betty and Veronica to tell them what the coin is about. So Betty and Veronica start chasing Jughead, who's chasing Archie. And as they run through the city, they run into Reggie, and Reggie starts chasing Veronica, who's chasing Betty, who's chasing Jughead, who's chasing Archie. And this chain of events starts up where Reggie starts worrying about it at Pop's chocolate shop. And so everybody in Riverdale quickly hears about it because, telephone, telegram, tell Midge. Midge calls Chuck, and Chuck calls Kevin, and Kevin calls, Cheryl Blossom. And about halfway through the book, literally half the town is chasing after them. But literally, Josie and the Pussycats stop their concert to chase after them. And we get to a point where suddenly Sabrina feels something wrong. It's a strange rumbling in space and time. It could destroy everything. It's bigger than anything we know Archie is choosing. So by this point, literally the whole city is chasing Archie down the street. And I honestly appreciate the fact that there are tons and tons of little cameos and things. Even the Wilkin boy. Which Wilkin boy? That Wilkin boy. Yeah. So we get to the end, and I'm not going to spoiler it for you.
My guess is he doesn't decide anything. Hot Dog swallows the quarter, and they have to follow Hot Dog around because Archie really needs a quarter to call his parents.
He forgot to call it before he flipped.
Oh boy. Way to go, Archie.
So here's the best part. This is a cute story. It is a fun little story. And I should have known when I picked this up and it was $3.99 that it isn't a serious, Archie's making decision. This is literally another example of Archie Comics leaning hard into the kind of the weird metatextual stuff, the same thing that we've gotten a little bit with, Afterlife with Archie and the Daring Adventures of Sabrina. The whole thing, the whole issue ends up being a literal Shaggy Dog story because the Shaggy Dog starts it. But you get to the end and Jughead decides that, the best thing to do is just to have both burgers. Yeah. Although we do get to see Jughead quoting Kierkegaard, which is remarkable. And I think that, that just Juggy courting Kierkegaard on panel is worth the price of admission for me. I don't know. Archie the Decision is, as Linda used to say, the Industrial Revolution was neither industrial nor revolution. Discuss. It is not a decision, but it's a cute story. 3 slices of meatloaf, very much worth your time. Mm-hmm. Dan Parent is having fun doing classic designs, but also doing some really modern stuff in the what do you call it when you have your wardrobe? In the wardrobe. And all of the pictures. And of course, I feel like this is just one of those cute little, hey, do you know that Archie's been around for 84 years and all these things are happening? Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
I mean, Archie's been around for forever, man. It's like all the way back when you look at Pep
1941.
Comics, it's like, wow, dude, that's a long life for a character to just be as ridiculous and wholesome as Archie has been over the years and still be able to sustain itself. I mean, this week on the Legion Clubhouse, Matthew and I talk about the nature of comics turning darker in the 1980s. And yet in the 1980s, Archie is like, hey, yo, everybody, look at these cool threads I'm wearing. Let's go out and break dance. And everyone's like, yeah. And then they break dance. And then Mr. Weatherby is like, I think I'm too old to break dance. And then what's the other old teacher's name?
Miss Grundy.
Oh, yeah. Miss Grundy is like, break dancing. I broke my hip. The end of that story. By the way, Archie Comics, if you want me to write one of your 1980s Archie Comics stories, there's my pitch. And I think it would work out just great. So the fact that Archie has been able to survive as long as it has is a testament. And to come around and be one of the most inclusive, most of the most diverse comic book cast of characters and stories out there, and to do horror at the same time. Archie Comics, what can't you do?
Well, they can't apparently heal those waffle iron burns on the side of his head. You'd feel like those scars would be gone after 84 years.
Some scars run deep, Matthew.
I guess.
Yeah. All right. That is Archie Comics. That was out last week. If you want to pick that up, that's a one-shot there. Out this week from Dark Horse Comics is Arkham Horror #2 by Cullen Bunn and Andrea Mutti. This was the one I reviewed a couple of weeks ago on the show. It is based on the Arkham Horror universe over at Fantasy Flight with all of the various games that they have been doing over the years. And so we do have our cast of characters. We do have Joe and Ginny Barnes running around trying to find Ginny's sister. I mean, everything that I've ever read, every book I have ever read with Ginny Barnes in it, she's always looking for her lost sister. That is the one driving thing that is trying to get Jenny where she wants to go and through the horrors of Arkham. This time, I felt like the last time was some weird setup and it kind of was structured odd. This time, this feels like a great story where Jenny remembers something from her past. They find a weird hourglass that does some weird things. It passes them through different dimensions. It may be reversing time or forwarding time. They get to a party where the last time apparently Jenny and her sister were at, and they go to a new party with the same people, and all these people are mysteriously young. And then we find out that they're behind part of the crazy stuff. And there's the indication of what really happened to Jenny's sister. And then there's just weird stuff that happens. It is a genuinely creepy issue. And a great second issue following an issue that I didn't think had a great start. I think this issue redeems the first. The art by Mutti is great. I really like the creepy tones. I like the color palette that's picked here. I think the everything doesn't have the dreamy factor that you see in some horror tales. This one is, I think the art is really good in this issue. It's well structured. It's well plotted. It had some moments where I was like, oh no, because they actually did something new and different with these characters and this universe from what I've seen playing, all the Arkham horror games, whatever it may be, Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror 2.0, whatever the one is where you're playing on the map, the Arkham Horror card game. They actually did something different that I really appreciated this time in the book. And I dug that. It would be interesting to see if Fantasy Flight somehow takes this story that Cullen Bunn has worked up and make it one of the adventure campaigns for the Arkham Horror card game series. Because I think it's interesting because it does provide a mystery. And it does create, like, they fight ghouls and they fight secret societies, these kinds of things. I think it's interesting from that aspect. I don't know if it would work if you had to play Joe or Ginny exclusively in the game, but I did dig this one a lot more than the first. And as we get into spooky season, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more scary comics hitting the bookshelves and on our to read pile and right here on our review section of the show. 4 slices of meatloaf, of Eldritch Meatloaf, out of 5 for Arkham Horror #2. Just really liked it top to bottom. It was a nice surprise. And yeah, you can go check it out. There's a link in the show notes for both Archie the Decision and Arkham Horror #2. We do get a little kickback if you do decide to buy through that, whether it's a physical copy or a Kindle edition Comixology copy. I think it's literally just a few cents. We're talking about $3.99 for each of these comics. So if you take 1%, I think that's 3 cents. So we get 3 cents of every sale. So if everybody listening goes and buys these 2 comics, we would have maybe $30. Think about that. Yeah, maybe $30.
And you know what you could do with $30?
I know what I could do with $30, and that's pay some of our bills.
Family to Arby's, right? Good Lord.
Oh no, you couldn't take a family to Arby's for $30. Believe me, unless they
really.
No, seriously, a family of 4, like their sandwiches or their roast beef sandwiches are no longer 5 for $5 type things. It's like the last time I went, just this summer, the boys wanted to go, and it was 3 of us, me, and I don't really eat a whole lot. I'll eat 1 sandwich and some curly fries and a drink, right? And the boys will probably do the same thing. It's like $45 for 3 people, $60 for a family of 4. Now, that being said, that was this summer. We have seen a lot of things happen, like Subway suddenly go, people don't want to pay $15 for our crappy subs. And so they've tried to figure out ways to bring the lower prices back. Certainly McDonald's has a lot of deals on their apps that you can get some better deals than what's on the billboard if you just go through the drive-through. But yeah, I would pay some of our major spoilers bills with $30.
Yeah.
So that's what would happen if everybody went and bought those 2 comics this week through our link. But even better is you could get a shout out right here on this show, just like Jacob Westfall, who became our newest patron in this past week. Jacob gets instant access to the entire back catalog of Major Spoilers podcast pre-shows. This week we talked about, can you give me reasons to justify the Hays Code? Give me good reasons why the Hays Code existed or why it should be brought back. That's what we talk about this week in the pre-show. Last week we had a lot of stuff that we talked about. You can go back and listen to things from 2 years ago when you become a Major Spoilers patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. On average, 4 bonus episodes a month at the silver level. That's $5 a month. $5 a month that you're not going to be able to find everywhere else. Exclusive is what I'm talking about, Matthew. That's the word that I'm looking for.
Exclusive.
Instead of saying you can't find it anywhere else, I can just say 4 exclusive episodes, like collectors, right? Like collector cards. You need to go out there and get them all.
These are rares. The regular shows are uncommons. These are rare.
I know. These are the ones that are packed with commercials and all that stuff. You also, depending at the silver level, you get Critical Hit a week early ahead of everyone else. Character sheets, a whole bunch more. You can find out more when you go and check us out at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. You can become a patron of the arts. Podcasts are art. You can become a patron. You can go around and be all snooty and say, yes, I did listen to this week's Major Spoilers podcast where they talked about something called an Arkham Horror from Dark Horse Comics and something about Archie the Decision, about a quarter and a dog and an Archie and a Jughead and a Veronica and a Betty.
These comical books.
I know, these comical books. I must listen to more Major Spoilers podcast. I'm glad I support the arts, Matthew, by becoming a patron. I became a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Yes, that's right. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Now I just can't stop hearing Jim Backus.
Lover, I've fallen down again, lover.
Get again, you fool.
I really wanted Rand to be here this week because one of my favorite Ookla the Mock songs is Everybody's Kang the Conqueror. Everybody is Kang the Conqueror. One of my favorite songs that Ookla the Mock has ever done. And so the reason why I wanted Rand here is because we are talking about the Kang Dynasty by Kurt Busiek and Alan Davis, released in the last time the collection was released was in August of 2023. Although the story came out in the early 2000s, I want to say, right?
Yeah, 2000 to
2001.
I think. Yeah, the annual 2001 is part of this.
Midway.
I think it started in 2000. It's like a 15-issue series.
Yeah. So. Issues 41 through 55 of the Avengers run. And it is, Kang has shown up with this flying space station in the shape of a sword, which I'm going to guess, if I'm not mistaken, Matthew, does this become the new Shield base afterwards, where they always talk about Sword and Shield, or have they taken over Kang's Sword ship?
No, it actually
wow,
is crashed and imploded.
Missed opportunity, Shield. Missed opportunity.
Well, Sword didn't come around for about 10 years after this, so yeah, it would be fine. But yeah, that would have been cool. I always feel like the idea of shaping your headquarters like a weapon.
I know, it seems really on the nose, right?
It is, yeah. And I feel like if S.H.I.E.L.D. were doing that, it would have to have been the S.H.I.E.L.D. under the control of Norman Crazy Pants Osborn, who's like, "Hi, how are you? I'm talking to my mask."
Yeah. So the basis of this story is Kang comes from the future with his son, Marcus the 23rd, and is like, "Hey, everybody, just so you know, I'm taking over your planet, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'll demonstrate by blowing up the World Trade Center, or not the World Trade Center, the United Nations. Sorry, wrong year. It would have been really weird if Kurt Busiek in 2001 had Kang blow up the World Trade Center, especially after Dr. Doom cried like he did a few years prior.
That would be a thing.
So the other thing is, he's like, there's no way you can stop me. By the way, all the criminals of this world, if you want to join allegiance to me and help overthrow your countries and pledge yourselves to me, I will take that into consideration, and you will become great generals in my army. I will fire all of the other generals, and I will only hire generals that are loyal to me. Kang the Conqueror, not to be confused with Immortus, because I don't want to become Immortus. I want to become the great and mighty Kang, Conqueror of Worlds.
Yeah. The literal purple-headed invader. Now, the problem with this story...
I've got some problems.
Here's the thing. Avengers Volume 3 is peak Avengers as far as I'm concerned. This is the Avengers at the top of their game.
Yeah.
And coming off of that extended run with Perez, we come into this and they are like, okay, here comes Alan Davis. And I'm like, if there's anybody in the world who I can consider not to be a big step down from George Perez, it's going to be Alan Davis. This story brings us this crazy, just endless knitting together of things that we've seen but not really thought about. I don't know if you know this, but Marcus, the Scarlet Centurion, is actually actually they do mention it. It's actually Warbird's son from issue 200.
Yes, I know.
Just horrible story.
Crazy things. So Rodrigo not able to be here this week. Rodrigo pops in and he says, "Hey, gang, my favorite parts of any Busiek's Marvel books is when he explains, fleshes out, and recaps some of the most bonkers situations in the Marvel universe, like how Warbird gave birth to her own husband, or how only half of Hank Pym slapped Janet. Thanks, kids." Rodrigo.
That is exactly what this is. And, several years ago, we did Avengers Forever, Volume 1, which was basically a giant fic for problems in the Avengers backstory. This is that molded together with one of the, and I am not a soldier, never been in a war situation, never had to actually be in a war zone. One of the few times that I read a comic that was ostensibly about characters at war, superheroes at war with supervillains, that actually feels like a war book. This book has consequences. Now, I can't say long-lasting consequences because comic books don't do long-lasting consequences. They never have, and they probably never will. But there are a lot of
Uncle Ben is still dead, so.
But they keep bringing him back. I will say, okay, here's the thing you need to know about the Kang Dynasty, Stephen. Are you ready?
I read this, so please tell me, because I have my own thoughts on this thing.
This is the greatest 3D man story ever written. This is the story that explains and it gives us the real story behind the 3D man's powers and why he's 3D.
Now, they also explain why he's not part of the Marvel universe after this, and it's not because of Kang, and it's not because everybody was reunited with their brothers and their sisters and their wives, etc. It's because the rights expired for the 3D man, and the 3D man went into public domain, and so then about 5 years later, Dynamite Entertainment, maybe 6 years later, Dynamite Entertainment says, "Hey, we're going to create a comic book series with nothing but, free public domain characters, in which includes the 3D Man and a bunch of others. So
that's Captain 3D. The 3D Man is still a Marvel character.
Well, okay.
He's very rarely used.
Okay.
But yeah, he popped up a couple years ago. But greatest 3D Man story ever told. And
well, of course, Marvel can now publish any 3D Man stuff they want. He's in public domain.
He's not in public domain. He was created in 1970. Stop it. Stop it. I will physically fight you. Okay, so Kang first appears in Avengers number 8 in 1964. Kang has always had a problem where he talks a bigger game than he does. Kang has always been easily defeated. This is a guy who's like, I can tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. I can see the future. I can see the past. I can manipulate you before you were ever born. But he never does until now. And then it gets kind of freaky deaky. And you're like, what just happened?
So this is
then he's,
So this is an interesting story because you read it, and the first issue is Kang showing up and saying, hey, you guys, I'm going to take over the world. And then suddenly the next couple of issues are Thor and Captain Marvel, a.k.a. Warbird, in Russia fighting undead radioactive zombies. And Captain America is getting turned into a radioactive zombie. And then you have not the Inhumans. What are the underground people called?
The Deviants.
The Deviants.
The Deviants,
rise up, and they're attacking. And so we got to spend a whole issue of dealing with Deviants attacks. And then we've got all of these different attacks that the Avengers are being stretched out on all sides, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like almost halfway through before Kang shows back up again and starts to become a real threat. Because in the meantime, you not only have Kang trying to take over the world, apparently there is somebody who has been around as a caveman, and he was exposed to radiation, and so now he is immortal. Wait, I'm sorry, not the Master of the World. I'm thinking of what's his name over at DC Comics. But the same thing holds true. Yeah, it's the same character. They just changed their names.
No, the Master of the World. Master of the World has a cool hat.
Yeah.
Vandal Savage.
So Master of the World is like, oh no, I'm going to take over the world, and I'm going to create all these pocket cities with domes that can't be broken into. And then we've got the U.S. government that's like, no, this is actually a Sentinels story, and we are going to unleash the Sentinels on the world. And the Avengers are just like, all right, you guys, we need a flippin' timeout. And then all of a sudden, they're like, we are going to fight. We've defeated the Deviants. We've defeated the radioactive zombies. We have taken care of the man of all time. We've done all of these different things. We've even had the Sentinels, we think, get taken care of. And oh, by the way, we've also dealt with a horrible cult that wants to demean mutants, but we're going to team up with them in this case to stop a space pyramid from landing on the planet and killing everyone.
Yeah.
This ends up with, we are going to take the battle to Kang. Let's go, everybody. Ho, ho. And we've got Sentinels, and we've got pyramid people, and we've got Deviants, and we've got everybody who comes out of the woodwork, and they're all fighting Kang. And Kang is like, my son, I must kill you for your betrayal. Good thing I've got a backup unit ready to go. You've defeated me this time, Avengers. Away!
My son. You have to say it like you're Marlon Brando.
Here's
my
the thing.
Son.
As much as I love Kurt Busiek, as much fun and out of control the Kang Dynasty is, unfortunately, this feels like a 4th or 5th season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Interesting.
I'm not saying that in a pejorative way, because a lot of people are like, oh, Buffy, Joss Whedon, boo, that's really bad. Kurt Busiek is Joss Whedon. I'm not saying that. But if you follow the plot of a 3rd or 4th, maybe even 5th season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, what happens? We are introduced to a big bad at the beginning of the season. And then now suddenly Buffy is dealing with an Angel issue or a Spike issue or a person who wants to turn the town into the Halloween costumes that they're wearing issue. I realize that's a 1st season episode.
That's a good
episode, to me. It is a good episode. I like that a lot because it shows Cordelia in her Catwoman costume, which is great. She actually wore that at a convention like a year or 2 ago. Because she still had it and was like, yeah, I can still fit in. I'm showing up at the convention this way. But then throughout the season, you have these little bits where the big bad of the Buffy season shows back up and does a few little devious things behind the scenes. And then, you've got your Giles, who is essentially your Tony Stark in this issue, who's just kind of sitting on the sidelines, doing things, tweaking things, studying things. And then in the last bit of the season, in the final 2 episodes, suddenly the whole town and all the people that Buffy has been fighting against for the entire season all come together to punch the big bad in the face, and then bunnies. And that's kind of how a Buffy season works in those later episodes, where everything all comes to a head, because you're like, how does this tie back into the big bad? That's what happens in the Kang Dynasty. All these little stories that you're like, I want to read more Kang, but you keep giving me radioactive zombies from Soviet Union. I don't care about that. Hold on. This is important, because they all come back at the end of the episode with the succubus guy and his wife. So that's why I say this feels very much like a season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I actually feel like it works for me in that Kang has always said, oh, I'm a master manipulator for the future, blah, 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 fish cakes. And in these issues, he proves it, because what he actually does isn't destroy the Avengers or actively even try to destroy the Avengers. He destabilizes the world around them. So that by the time he shows up to destroy the Avengers, you've got, the Triune Understanding storyline goes all the way back to the first.
Is that just an Avengers thing, or is that also an X-Men thing?
No, the Triune Understanding is an X-Men. No, not an X-Men, just an Avengers
thing. Just an Avengers thing, okay.
That's a Busick thing that launched Triathlon. Yeah. The new version of a 3D man.
Right.
And then, of course, they had been working with bits and pieces of all of this. These are things that keep popping up. The Presence is wonderful, because the Presence is one of those characters who had a wonderful arc of Defenders in 1977 and then disappeared for 20 years. I really feel like what this story actually does, and it's something that the Marvel Universe doesn't usually do. It lets the villain win. Kang takes over the world. He destabilizes everything. All of these people work for him. The Avengers literally surrender to Kang halfway through.
With an asterisk, because it is just the Avengers signing it over. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's certainly not the President of the United States, who everyone knows has the authority to sign off the entire planet, because the president has escaped.
The Earth has surrounded. Yeah. And that's
there's some jingoism in how that's written, but yeah.
I think that it also kind of takes into account the traditional Marvel universe. And the traditional Marvel universe goes like this. There's New York. There's something in California. Yeah, everything else is probably Latveria.
And then apparently there's France, who surrenders very quickly.
Don't be mean to France. Some of my favorite French people are from France. But I think that in terms of how can we do something that has never been done before, let's have the villain actually win, and then have the Avengers have to basically put this all together, come back from behind. I think that's a sports term, right? Sports is you win or you lose and you come back from behind. Sure. I know sports. I'm a big fan of sports. Like this one time.
Please go on. Please go on.
Okay. So sports. What was I saying? Oh, the metaphor. The Avengers literally have to come back from nothing. We have a whole episode, a whole issue with Wanda and Simon in prison, like literally imprisoned by Kang for whatever they've done against him. And it does make Kang feel more impressive.
Oh, man. What's his name? Miracle Man. I think you said Vision. I mean, I know they're the same person in quotes.
Wonder Man.
Yeah, Wonder Man. It's just like total crazy, that whole story arc in this.
It is. And it's another one of those things that it's the culmination of years of storylines. It is just crazy how much is going into this, and how much, not just of his own Avengers arc, because this is Avengers Volume 3. This is going back to the beginning of the Avengers. This is taking into account decades of stories, and not just trying to fix problems or do things that, hey, how do we explain the fact that the Human Torch both is and isn't dead?
Yeah.
This is an example of, we're going to do this on a global scale. And I feel like it might have worked better if it were done, and God help me, I can't believe I'm saying this, as one of those modern crossovers where all of the books have to participate. But I'm also glad that it wasn't.
Yeah,
because
I think that's one of the things that this book is probably the last time that was ever done. Maybe I'm being a little exaggerating there, but today that wouldn't be the case. Today that wouldn't be the case. Spider-Man would have a whole issue dedicated to him trying to save New York City or trying to get across the wall or whatever that's the case. Having to fight a deviant that has crawled up from the sewers.
He'd have his own limited series, and the limited series would be like, oh, I'm Spider-Man. How do I survive? There's vampires everywhere. But yeah, Spider-Man, by the way, is from Queens, and thus in my head talks like Archie Bunker. I don't know if you knew that. He's not.
Yeah, you've said that many times.
Many times. So back to the Kang Dynasty. As we come out of this arc, they kind of shot the Avengers in the foot, because you can't really top this without going absolutely nutso crazy.
Well,
the next big thing that happens to the Avengers is probably House of M.
Yeah.
And that ruins everything.
Yeah, it does feel like part of the Avengers kind of break up after this, right? Thor is like, I have seen my friends die too soon. These crumbly little mortals bring me too much grief. I must go home now. And then he died on the way back to his planet. A lot of,
is not Poochie.
Here's the thing. I like this for what it is, but after about the third issue and I saw what was happening, and then it was just like, oh, I know all the beats that are happening next in this story. It kind of took away some of the magic. Also, when I hear something that's called the Kang Dynasty, I want like every issue to feature Kang twisting his mustache under his mask and doing all sorts of things until they find a way to defeat him. And that's not what this is. It is, but it isn't. It's very misleading because of the lot of little side plots that they have to set up in order to make the Earth turning against Kang that much more impactful in the final 3 issues or whatever it is there. So I was kind of a little disappointed that Kang isn't in this more. But I agree with you that I do like that Kang's goal, because he even says to Marcus at the beginning, he's like, listen, this is the time period that I've never been able to conquer Earth. I've conquered Earth all these other times, but this one time, right? And he does it by destabilizing. He doesn't go in, guns a-blazing, even though he could use sword and just wipe out the planet. He attacks the UN, but he doesn't target Avengers HQ. That's really weird to me. But the fact that he destabilizes the planet and causes everybody to be pulled a million different directions is a brilliant strategy. Yeah, but I just wanted more Kang in this book.
To some degree, I definitely feel that, but I also kind of feel like the idea here, that expectation that if you were really going to take over the world, you would have to think global in a way that superhero comics usually can't. I really do appreciate that. And I feel like it's kind of very important and a little telling that one of the guest artists, after the whole thing with Alan Davis kind of falls apart, Alan ends up doing like 2 issues worth of art. And then we see a lot of guest artists. One of them is Brent Anderson, who is Kurt's co-creator on Astro City. So there is a whole issue of Kang Dynasty that reads and looks and feels an awful lot like an Astro City story. And I feel like that's important too, because this is almost, not exactly. I mean, it's not like doing Astro City in the Marvel Universe, because that's misleading, but it's definitely something that takes some of those lessons learned from Astro City, that if we're going to say that these things are really realistically real, there are going to have to be larger consequences. And you're going to have to think of things, not the way that a smash and grab criminal would, but you're going to have to think in terms of an actual world conqueror. And then sometimes the worst enemy of a world conqueror is another guy who fancies himself a world conqueror. So then you also have to deal with the master of the world, and you also have to deal with Sergei the Presence, and you also have all of these other things. It really sets up Kang as, at least, to some degree, above and beyond villain tropes in the Marvel universe. This is not just, some guy who's like, hey, I knocked over a grocery store and then Thor punched me in the face.
Yeah, but I also don't think that he really does anything more than what a cosmic villain would do if he showed up on Earth. He doesn't really do more than maybe even a supervillain might do to Earth.
I would definitely argue against that.
I mean, that's fine. That you can, but I think that you get a Norman Osborn as president, and he creates the Thunderbolts, and they're doing destruction. Norman Osborn could easily, if he wanted to, and if they wanted to pursue it, but they've already done the Kang Dynasty story. They could have easily had Norman Osborn destabilize the worlds until he's like, look, my unifying force will go out and protect the world. You just all need to kneel to me, Norman Osborn. Totally not the Green Goblin, you guys, because I'm cured.
Right. Kang's time travel thing kind of gives him something that a lot of, and especially in 2001, a lot of books didn't deal with. We have pretty regularly, we have the discussion where somebody does a time travel arc and you're like, man, that's not how time travel works. We do have in this book, we have him dealing with time travel things in a way that feels different. It feels like it, okay, I can't conquer this era directly. I can't thunder in with my anachronauts and take over.
Yeah.
But I can do sneaky stuff. I kind of like that.
I think the best part of Kang is that he is so threatened by his other selves. He literally has a whole, there's like a whole page where he is like, I do not want to become a Mortis. The last thing that I ever want to do is become a Mortis. I must be my own Kang. And it's like, no, you're Kang. And he's just so threatened by the thought that a Mortis is better than him that he's going to do whatever it takes to take over this time period.
Who do you hate more than yourself?
Yeah.
When you look at the people you hate, are they not the people who remind you of the worst aspects of yourself? It's
have that conversation every morning.
Right? Every time you and I have a discussion.
Every Wednesday morning, every Thursday morning.
Every morning there's a giant.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm very torn by this series. On the one hand, it's Kurt Busiek, and that's good stuff. Yes. You get a lot of really good Kurt Busiek type storytelling. On the other hand, it feels somewhat, antiquated, I couldn't call it, but it feels like very much once you know how it's going, you know exactly where it's going. And there are very few surprises once you understand what's going on. And I would say by issue 4 or 5, if you haven't figured that out, then I guess keep reading. But there were a few surprises. I honestly thought that Warbird was going to get her powers back by absorbing all the nuclear energy from the radioactive zombies. Turns out she got it by becoming the fuse for a giant space bomb. Wow, that sounds familiar. By the way, everybody, listen to this week's Legion Clubhouse. And it just seems, I don't know. I liked it, but I don't feel fulfilled after watching this. And I hate to say that, but that's kind of how I walked away from it. Was it fun? Yes. Was it interesting? Yes. Was it the greatest story of all time? No, not really. Was it a good story? Yeah, it was a good story, but I don't feel the need to ever read this story again.
That, I think, is legit because I read this book. That's my catchphrase, by the way.
Shut up, Travis. But no one's talking to you.
More importantly, I remember in 2001, reading these issues and being like, oh, man, this feels like it's going on and on and on. But reading it this time, reading it in the year, I don't know, what year is it? 2077. Reading it in the present feels different because I think that I'm not waiting a month at a time, but also it kind of feels like this is a series that part of the reason that I think you're so annoyed at the things that you can predict is this is a series ahead of its time. 25 years ago, this is not what comics were doing. Now, this is what comics do. This is what a lot of comics do, and they do it a lot.
Well, I also compared it to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and by this time,
that's
when this came out, the series had already been doing that for a couple of times already.
Right. You're old. It's fine. I'm old too. But that's also in some ways the selling point, because if the biggest complaint that we get out of the youngsters, your Zachs and your Rodrigos, is these old comics don't feel like the modern comics that they love. If you're a kid today and you pick up Kang Dynasty, you may say, hey, this feels really familiar. Hey, I feel like I've seen these beats before, but you're not going to be like, this feels old and antiquated and out of touch. And this is like, I'm Doug and you're Dad and I'm out of here kind of thing. And I feel like that is one of the strengths, in that if, the Russo brothers make this exact story in movie form, I think people will love it. They won't.
They won't, because we're not getting the Kang Dynasty.
Right. They won't, they can't, and they shouldn't. But if they did.
I mean, if they did so listen, if they were really going to adopt, if they were going to adopt the Kang Dynasty, which was on the docket, right? The docket was Kang Dynasty was coming up, and everything from that we had seen with Kang so far in the movies was basically things that Kang in this book talks about, whether he was Victor Timely or whether he was Immortus or whatever. There were bits of what have come before, even in the Inhumans, where we're introduced to deviants, where we're introduced to a celestial emerging from the planet Earth that no one has addressed since then. Kang Dynasty could have touched on all of that stuff, but then because of an actor problem, they decided to scrap the whole thing, which I don't know if that was the best choice. They could have very easily done something else and still continued on with this. So if they had done that as a movie, if they had done the Kang Dynasty parts 1 and 2, or just in one part, although parts 1 and 2 would probably need to be 2 parts, everything leading up to the fall of Earth and then everything after the fall of Earth, very much like Endgame and the other one. I think it probably could have worked very, very well.
Yeah. And I think that most importantly, it would not have been something where people are like, oh man, what is this weird, crazy, I don't know what this is. I don't care about any of this stuff. I feel like it would still play. And this story still plays 25 years down the line. Whereas, we talked, you joked about Dr. Doom crying in that Spider-Man issue, but Dr. Doom crying was only a few months before this.
Oh yeah. It was just right in the same time period.
Yeah, that didn't age well. That aged incredibly badly.
Yes.
People hated that a month later. So you do kind of say to yourself, has this aged better than other things of the same era? And the answer is yeah, I think it kind of has.
I'm just looking something up because Superman did a World Trade Center issue, a 9/11 issue, right?
Did they?
I'm trying to remember. I thought DC did something. Marvel certainly did something.
Marvel did something in continuity. DC did a tribute book that was
that's what it was.
It was more about like a lot of glamour shots and kind of things. Whereas Marvel had a story that was in continuity.
Yeah, and then Image Comics had, what was that series about the guy who was the superhero? He had the tech, and he was only able to save one of the towers, but not both of them.
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina, that's right. Yeah, that's really interesting how there are those. You can look at those 3 books, and some of them, like Ex Machina, kind of holds up because it's an alternative history.
Right.
The Superman one is just like, okay, well, we're just trying to raise money, or the DC one is we're trying to raise money for these, and then Marvel is just like, nope, we're going to make it a story plot point.
Dr. Doom's crying on the streets, you guys.
Yeah.
And we're...
Yeah, anyway. Kang Dynasty, here's the thing. I think if you wanted to see what could have been in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would say go pick up the Kang Dynasty. I think it's a fun read. It's an interesting read. It follows the right beats and hits the beats where they need to happen so that when you get to those final 2 or 3 issues, you're like, heck yeah. So I would say it is worth the read. I might say borrow it as opposed to buy it, but I definitely think it is worth reading. Matthew?
I really do wish that Rand and Rodrigo could have been here for this one because, knowing Rand and having,
Oh, no, I think he would have loved this issue.
Oh, yeah, he would absolutely have loved it. And I feel like he would have had a perspective on it that maybe you and I don't. But I also feel like this is a book that serves as a capstone to one of the best Avengers eras, period. Not merely just modern Avengers, but best Avengers of all. And it does it in a way that makes me not necessarily happy, but satisfied. We get to the end. We see all of this stuff. We see setup for Carol becoming Captain Marvel. We see setup for all of these things that come later. We see setup for, God help us, Avengers disassembled and the death of Jack of Hearts and all of the crazy stuff that ends up happening under Bendis. But most importantly, we see a solid closing point, not necessarily an end because the Avengers don't end, but a closing point to Kurt Busiek's run on the team that feels appropriate for everything that's come before. And those are really rare in modern comics. And I feel like that alone, if you had, been reading this, if you were picking these up and reading them in like an omnibus or those big collections that Marvel does now, what is it? The whole story or the big galoot? I don't know what they call them. If you're doing that, definitely this is one that when you get here, it's going to feel like the big damn heroes ending. And I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, very cool. All right, everybody. Thank you for taking the time and checking us out this week. If you found value in the show, we would love for you to become one of our podcast patrons, where you can find even more fun, including the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show that we talked about a little bit ago. You can find out more at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Next week on the show, we are taking one last look at Dark Ride. Why? Because you know that we love comics, and we know that you love comics, as does everyone else, and because you guys are the ones that said, I'd sure like for you guys to finish doing the Dark Ride stuff. Take care.
Fat the X-ray vision of a Superman. I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, he kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm Stark Raven, it's like a man of iron. I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast. Being shot up in a fun bee in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa, 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 whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.